What's up, sports fans, and welcome to the Sports Opinions Podcast. This is episode number 8. I am your host, as always, Alex Cuesta, and this is the first time since episode 1 that I am riding solo on the podcast. Hopefully it goes a little bit better in the first episode where I sounded like a complete and total robot. But, today we're going to try and get through a good amount of sports topics like we always do. Going to talk a little NFL, NBA. So we're going to have some fun with it today. To start off, I want to give a shout out to my alma mater, the track team, Marist Track and Field. Their indoor is back in full swing, indoor track, as they come early from their break that all other college kids are on. If you want to follow the Marist Track team, you can follow their blog page that head coach Pete Calizzo keeps at www.runredfox.blogspot.com. Now, Marist competed this past weekend at the Spartan Regional Invite over in Staten Island at Ocean Breeze in that beautiful indoor facility that they have there. Now, a little background. I ran for Marist College. I was an assistant coach there, volunteered for about 2 years, paid for 2 years, so I'm still very close with the team, although I kind of sucked as a runner. But that's neither here nor there. So a few highlights from the Marist competing over at the Spartan Regional Invite. Women's team continued their dominance from a great cross-country season that they had. Our women had fantastic cross-country season under head coach Chuck Williams, and it only continued at the first real invitational of indoor track. The women's 4x2 set a brand new record over at this thing. They not only won the meet, but they set a brand new record of 1 minute 45 seconds, .36. That team was comprised of Candace Forrest, Denisha Craig, who's a record holder in a bunch of sprinting events, Grace Cepeda, and Debbie Burke. This is the first real meet of indoor track, so they don't get too many opportunities to run the 4x2, but if they have another opportunity, I guarantee those girls will shatter their own record again because they will only get stronger with how hard they work. I know 3 out of those 4 girls I've coached, and they all work unbelievably hard. But they weren't the only strong performance for the women at this invitational. Candace also competed in the 60-meter and open 200, taking second in both of those events. Debbie Burke won the 400-meter. But, sprinting wasn't the only thing that we had there. We had some distance as well. Shea Bohan ran a fantastic opening season, open mile, 5:02.56, going out and winning that event. And in the 3,000-meter run, the women had dominance, sweeping 1 through 4 with Alexandra Bartoletta, Gianna Tedeschi, Haley Collins, and Jordan Casey all coming in 1 through 4, and a little shout out to Jordan. Happy 21st birthday. You had that a few days ago. So happy 21st. Welcome to officially being old. But again, there was still even more highlights. The women's 4x8 won the day, and the women's distance medley relay took second. So as I was saying, the women have continued their dominance, had a great meet. This isn't a big meet, it's a small meet, but it's an awesome start for a team that's only getting stronger and only going to get better as Coach Chuck Williams continues to recruit unbelievable quality there. But the men did have a few highlights. In the 3,000 meter, Dietrich Moselle and Joel Miller both had strong performances. And in the 4x8, the 4x8 A team took second overall with Brian Henderson, Tanner Senius, Matt Hawker, and Stephen Morrison all running. As I look at their times, I was an 800-meter guy. I coached middle distance. For the early season, it's not bad, but all 4 of you guys, you all know me. You got to step your game up. But enough boring you with my alma mater, Marist College. Go Red Foxes. We're going to move right into some NFL talk. This week is obviously championship weekend with the AFC and NFC championship games going on. The NFC features the Vikings versus the Eagles. Eagles obviously home, the number 1 seed, but they earned that number 1 seed basically on the back of Carson Wentz playing unbelievably. Backup Nick Foles has played well in his stead, but I think that it's all going to come to an end when they meet a Vikings team who is as complete as any team that I've seen in a long time. And they have the defense that gets after you. They have an offense that can be explosive with players that you may not have even heard of before the start of this season. Case Keenum has been kind of a journeyman backup-ish type of player. Had a few chances to start, but never really had a great team around him, so he wasn't able to show what he's made of. Now that he has some players to, run the ball, throw the ball to, Case Keenum is showing that he belongs in the NFL, and he's a really, really strong player. Good quarterback, tough kid. I think a lot of people are still counting him out and are still kind of against him. So I think he's just going to step up to the plate. His favorite target, Adam Thielen, another guy who I don't even know if many people knew. They probably heard the name, but they didn't know he was still in the NFL before this season. He's having a great year. He made some amazing catches in the previous game with the Vikings versus Saints in the Minnesota Miracle. He just goes up there. His arms are extended. He wins almost every jump ball that you see him take. So Adam Thielen is going to be an important part of this game. And the guy that made the Minnesota Miracle happen, Stephon Diggs, the assumed number one wide receiver going into the season, really made a great play, and he's going to go down in history with one of the greatest plays in Minnesota history and definitely in NFL playoff history. And, you look at their running back situation, too. Latavius Murray was a big piece of that Oakland success, and, they let him get away. He signs with Minnesota. He wasn't expected to be the starter with Dalvin Cook coming in as a rookie from Florida State. Cook goes down and gets hurt. Latavius Murray doesn't miss a beat. He looks like the strong running back that he was in Oakland. And with him running the ball, it really gives Keenum a good weapon because the balance on that offense is absolutely perfect for what you want in football. I see the Vikings going and winning this game. The Eagles, I know they have a good defense. I know they have good weapons. They have two bruising running backs in LeGarrette Blount and J.A.G.A. They have a good speedster in Clement out of the backfield who can catch the ball, do a lot of nice things. Nelson Aguilar is having a really nice season. Alshon Jeffrey, I got to mention him. He's a very good player. But I do doubt Nick Foles. I think, Nick Foles under Chip Kelly did some really nice things when he was first with the Eagles. Then he went to St. Louis, and possibly not on all his fault, but he still wasn't a great starter. And you saw some things out of him lately that, goes to show that he's not the guy that everyone thought he was in Philadelphia. He's made some clutch plays, but he's not the most accurate guy. And I think against a really full team like the Vikings, he's going to get exposed. I think guys like Everson Griffin on the defense of the Vikings will really put pressure on him. He'll crumble a little bit, and if the Eagles can't get their run game going, then they're going to be in a lot of trouble, and the Vikings might win this one going away. Advice for Vikings fans: if you're near the Philadelphia area, stay away. Philly fans are brutal, and they will get really pissed if their team starts to lose, and nobody wants to see anyone get hurt. So, yeah, good advice. Don't go near that game if you can avoid it. On to the AFC matchup of Jaguars. The Jacksonville Jaguars defeated the Pittsburgh Steelers to get to the Patriots in New England, who had a game against the Tennessee Titans, which, I'll touch on in a little bit. I have a few thoughts about that game. But the Jaguars, they really remind me of my favorite New York Jets team of old, back with Mark Sanchez and Rex Ryan and that defense, because the Jags, they don't win games the traditional NFL style. They don't throw the ball around the yard 45, 50 times, 400-plus yards, all these touchdowns in the air. They, Blake Bortles made some great throws this weekend, but their recipe for success is play great defense, run the football. Blake Bortles, don't turn it over, make a few really good throws late. And that's been their key to doing it. Now, if Bortles can remain steady, then I think that they really have a formula to beat the Patriots. And the Patriots, they're a tough team to beat because Tom Brady gets that ball out of his hands quickly. He wants to put it on a spot. He wants to take a 3-step drop. He really knows exactly where he wants to put the ball right away. But the Jags can do what the Jets did to him during those Rex years that made it really tough on him. They hit the hell out of Tom Brady in almost every game besides that one Thanksgiving game, which was embarrassing. I think it was a 42-3 drudging by the Patriots on the Jets. But for the most part, especially in the playoffs, the Jets hit Tom Brady. The Jets were physical with the receivers. They had the cover corners to really, take Tom off his timing and not allow him to take that three-step and that quick pass. The Jacksonville Jaguars have a guy like that in Jalen Ramsey who can take away Tom Brady's first option. The real question is going to be who's going to cover Danny Amendola, who was a big feature this week. Great route runner, good hands. Who's going to shut down Gronkowski? And also, who the hell is Bill Belichick going to feature in the backfield? I know Dion Lewis had an unbelievable game. He's had a great end to the season. But it really is like Bill Belichick to, show Dion Lewis these last few weeks and then completely phase him out of the game plan. So you prepare for Dion Lewis, prepare, and then all of a sudden you're going to get a healthy dose of Mike Gillespie. Or, White is going to be the feature guy. So they have, and I think even Burkhead, they have him there. So Bill Belichick is known for doing this with his running backs where he really features one guy strong and then he completely switches it up, throws off the game plan, and that guy ends up having a huge game. So that's my one concern for the Jaguars, but I think that defense is good enough to really do some things. I ultimately think in Foxborough, Tom Brady, and not to mention that New England defense has really stepped it up. They struggled earlier this year. Everyone questioned if they're falling apart, but people tend to forget that Bill Belichick is a defensive guru. He's not really an offensive guy. He's a defensive stud. I knew they were going to get that fixed, and that Patriots defense is humming. If they can cause some problems for the Jags, Blake Bortles has to really throw the ball. If the Jaguars get behind, they lose this game. That's really what I feel. You can't get behind against Tom Brady in Foxborough. So I think it'll be a dogfight. I think eventually the Pats will overcome. And I think, again, I've made my prediction before, we're going to see Vikings versus Patriots. Really think that that's going to be the Super Bowl, and I think it's going to be a hell of a Super Bowl. And one thing that's going to be interesting about this Super Bowl is if it goes my way, if the Vikings move on and they play the Pats or they play the Jags, whoever, as long as the Vikings move on, they'll have a home Super Bowl. The Super Bowl this year is in Minneapolis. It's in their stadium. And a lot of people might lend that to be an advantage. I see it as it's an advantage during the lead-up portion of the game. The advantages come with they're going to be around their fans 24/7. Their fans don't have to travel to be around them like the Jacksonville or Foxborough fans will have to travel. They will be able to sleep in their own house, which I don't think people understand the difference between, sleeping at home, having rest in your bed, having to just drive to your stadium is a big advantage over having to sleep in a hotel. Now, I don't know if the league rules are going to make the Vikings possibly stay in a hotel to make it even. I think it'll be a little bit ridiculous if they do. But, again, the lead up will be an advantage to Minnesota if they can make it. During the game, I don't see the advantage happening. Those tickets are way too expensive for the common fan to really buy. You need to win those tickets if you're a common fan. Most of the people there have money, do this because it's an event, it's a spectacle. They're traveling to see their team. Will there be more Minnesota fans there? Probably. But will it be overwhelming to the point where the Vikings will have a true home field advantage? I really can't see that playing a huge factor if the Vikings do make it. I think it'll be a great story. I think it'll be fun to see the Vikings playing at home and truly being home, even though it'll be funny if they play the Patriots. They won't technically be the home team because the Patriots have the better standing in their conference. So it'll be like a funny dichotomy where they're the away players, but I don't think the Patriots will make the Vikings give up their home locker room. I don't think, we could say what we want about the Pats. I don't think as an organization, I don't think as an ownership, Robert Kraft will really push for that. But who knows how that's going to go. And, Minnesota has to make it there first beforehand. But I said I wanted to touch on the Patriots-Titans game that happened this past weekend. And you look at the score, 35-14, Patriots dominance, home in Foxborough. everything everyone expected. Titans were going to be overmatched. By and large, everyone thought they were the worst team during the divisional round anyway. But I like to put a little caveat in that, where the first half was one of the worst official jobs I have ever seen done. Every single call seemed to go to Patriots' way. There was so many things that were either missed or seems to be blatantly done. I'll just run down the three major ones that I saw. First, it was an offsides call that wasn't. The officials wanted to call it on New England, but then they didn't call it, which, I don't ever see an offsides call ever getting overturned. That call, they call it, they know who it's going to be on, they know what happens, they get it done. That happened. They missed a crackback call, which, if anyone doesn't know what a crackback block is, it's when a player on the defense is running to go and make a play on a ball carrier facing away, and the opposing player blindsides them. Now, back in the day, this was a highlight block. This is something, players live for, getting that crackback block, and, it was a big play. Players live to get that opportunity, but with the NFL wanting to get safer, they wanted to eliminate these types of plays. They wanted to get the crackback block out of the game, the big blocks away from the play, things like that. They wanted to make it so that it was a much safer game. And Chris Hogan, I don't know if that's his exact name, but yeah, Hogan did a massive crackback block to free up one of his players on a big play, and it completely went unmissed. And you could even see two of the officials talking with each other, and I guess one of them said that his head was on the right side, so they weren't going to call him for clipping. But the crackback block is illegal in the NFL now. You're not allowed to do that to a player, so they completely missed a call. And what makes it more egregious is they called this exact call last week on Tennessee Titans wide receiver Eric Decker. So they made a call on a team that the Patriots are playing against last week that they refused to make themselves, and that call would have been big. It would have been, possibly a momentum shifter. It's a personal foul. It's big yards. It calls back a first down play. Makes it seem like there was an obvious favoritism towards the Patriots. And probably one of the most egregious ones, at the end of the first half, the Patriots are driving, trying to get into field goal range. Tom Brady completes a pass. The player doesn't get down right away. I think it was Brandon Cooks. Doesn't get down right away. Tries to skip for more yards. Eventually is touched in the field of play. And for some reason, the clock sits at 1 second for a solid 5 seconds, where the timing official, decides to give the Patriots the benefit of the doubt that they were going to call that timeout and just lets 1 second sit there. I've seen the clock errors have happened, but this one was bad. And to the point where no one said anything. None of the officials went back on and, really looked at it. Even to the point where Tony Romo announcing the game mentioned, the clock stopping. And he even mentioned a few times that these officials were really helping out the Patriots. They have earned this stigma of being a team that gets help. They have plenty of calls this year that have helped them. The overturned touchdowns with Safarian Jenkins and Jesse James. A lot of different calls that have helped out Tom Brady. Tom Brady gets a lot of benefit of the doubts when it comes to roughing the passer. So it's really something that they have earned in terms of the criticisms. But overall this year, in the games that I've watched, officiating has been pretty damn terrible. And along with the replay officials, I count them in this, running to replay every little thing, and they've just injected themselves into the game so much in the name of quote-unquote safety, and getting it right. And for me, it's like, in a lot of times they're not getting it right. They're slowing down the game. They're taking away big plays from underdog teams. Cleveland Browns couldn't, even if they could have won a game this year, probably had so many calls against them, like holding calls off big plays and defensive holdings. And, those are really, the defensive holdings are subjective because certain teams don't get called for that. You don't see the Patriots really get called for the defensive holdings down the field on the secondary. You didn't see the Steelers get called for it a lot. You don't see certain teams getting these calls, but like my New York Jets, they get called for it all the time. It'll be a big 3rd and 13. The secondary comes up big, and all of a sudden a flag comes in a defensive holding. Where I think it's one of those plays where defensive backs are asked to do so much, and if that quarterback is in the pocket for more than 3 seconds, there's going to be some jersey grabbing, and I think every single corner or secondary player does that. But it's just a choice of the officials to throw that flag or not. It's similar to offensive holding where they say, it's the old adage, officials can call offensive holding on almost every single play. It's just when they choose to really call it if it's egregious. I just think this year the officials have been injected way too much. They're getting more and more injected into the game every single year. Part of it, to me, is the league. They need to review what's important to them in terms of what needs to be called. Officials get so much more put on their plate every single year, and I know we rip them, and they get the brunt of the criticism because they're making these calls, but they're put on mandates every year, new mandates every year to call this more, call that more, call this more, and it's never called this less. You never hear, you know what, you're going to call more defensive holding, so don't call as many pass interferences, or, don't call as many this. It's always call this more. So they're really put on that you need to call more penalties and never less. So in order to get the passing grades from their superiors, they're injecting themselves more in the game because they're now told, in the name of safety, when in doubt, throw the flag. So it's something that the league needs to look at. And if you're talking about losing fans, the politics, I guess that might play a part of it. And I really don't talk politics on this podcast or on this blog because, I just don't feel necessary for me to share my political opinions on this. But, and again, there's a time and a place for that. I actually do have a podcast that I want to do that would talk about politics specifically, but this isn't the time or place. But I think, people point to the ratings. I think a lot of the rating drops is because the change in style of football isn't what a lot of people used to see. It's not as much hard-nosed defense, hard hits, run the football, grind it out. It's a lot of air it out stuff. The officials injecting themselves all the time. People are getting tired of seeing yellow flags everywhere. And I think the constant replays. You have some people that say, yeah, do it, get it right. But I think a lot of the people are just getting bored by the fact that a big touchdown, a huge interception, all this momentum shifting stuff really amounts to nothing because the momentum stops the moment they have to review it. And there's certain things they're reviewing they don't have to review. There was, I forget who scored a touchdown, but it was a player, I think it was Leonard Fournette, ran in for a touchdown and the ball was in his right arm. He clearly got his feet in, but the ball never, I guess the ball was outside the pylon when he got his feet in, but that's a touchdown in every single level of the game. The official called it down at the 1, and the coach needed to challenge the play in order to get into a touchdown. There's no reason that call should be down at the 1. It's not like a player who's catching the ball out of bounds with his feet inbounds. It doesn't matter that the ball was out of bounds in the air. It mattered that the player kept his toes in bounds and completed the catch. Why should that be different for a player running the ball? If the ball's tucked in his right arm and his feet are in play, he's an extension of the football. So the fact that they even called that play down at the 1, the confusion, I think, is on so many levels of the fans not knowing what certain calls are. We don't know what a catch is. We don't know what a touchdown is. And I think the officials are getting a little confused at this point on exactly what to call. I don't know if they know exactly when exactly a touchdown is, when exactly the player's in. And they're really relying or told to rely more on these replays. Make your call on the field, but it's going to get replayed if it's close. So, it's okay to be wrong. And I think that's something that, you're putting more pressure on the officials while taking the onus about them wanting to be perfect off of them. So it's a real difficult situation. It's a double-edged sword. And, speaking of the officiating and going back to the Patriots, if the Patriots get into the Super Bowl against whoever, do they have an advantage? Is there a clear advantage for the Patriots in terms of what we've seen this year? With the fact that they just get benefits. They just get calls. They get a lot of things. Tom Brady, has he earned the right to get some calls? Probably, but he gets them. And, there's certain things that have gone against him. And a team like either the Vikings, or even the Eagles. They're both underdogs in this game. They're both teams that don't have the current legacy that the Patriots have. So they're going to be considered the underdog. And will they get the benefit of the doubt on calls? I don't think so. I think you're looking at the Patriots getting more than either of those teams. And, the respect that a 40-year-old playing the way he plays gets. It'll be interesting to see if the Patriots get this far. It'll be interesting to see this weekend with the Patriots playing the Jaguars, what the Jaguars get and what they don't get. Overall, the officiating has been absolutely terrible this year. I'm hoping that it's better in the Super Bowl. I'm hoping that they let the guys play. And in the biggest point in the game, they don't inject themselves, because they've done that too. They've had fantastic games, but then when it comes down to the final 2 minutes, they inject themselves. They change the game. The Steelers game was a perfect example with the Patriots Steelers. That was a beautiful game, great game. No one remembers how great it was because of the botched touchdown call. That, the touchdown that was taken back for James. There's all those things going on, but we're going to shift gears to a team that's out, the New York Football Giants. Offseason has started for most NFL teams besides the Final Four. The New York Giants, one of my local teams here, is one of them. They fired their GM and coach for this past year. They fired Jerry Reese, fired Ben McAdoo, and they hired former Carolina Panthers general manager, and he has a real reputation for being a hard-nosed guy. I listen to a lot of New York media. I listen to a lot of WFAN. He's known for being a hard-nosed guy. He had some issues in Carolina because of his hard-nosed style. But if you look at Carolina, he was there to build that defense with guys like Luke Kuechly, Thomas Davis Sr. He really was an integral part, and he was the guy that had the balls to get rid of Josh Norman in his heyday because he didn't fit in with a certain culture. And I think that, a lot of teams are bashing him. A lot of personalities are bashing him because of his hard-nosed, old-school style. He believes in defense, believes in running the ball, believes in the offensive line. And I don't get why he's getting bashed. You look at the Giants, their biggest knock has been that they can't run the ball. They have no consistent line play. Their linebackers have been absolutely terrible. And their culture seems to be getting away from them. That culture that the Giants have been known for of, having strong leadership, keeping everything in-house, being a model organization. Besides Lawrence Taylor, who was just an animal on the field and you couldn't do anything about what he did off the field because he was that good on the field, the Giants have had a lot of upstanding players that have really brought the franchise a good name. Odell Beckham Jr. is not a bad guy. Unbelievable player, kind of immature. And we take immaturity really out of hand. He hasn't done anything egregious off the field, but the Giants expect to see maturity out of their players. I'm hoping Odell Beckham can mature this year and be, more of a Giants player. And I think that Dave Gettleman is going to bring that out of him. He demands that. He already let go of offensive lineman Hart because he said he didn't want to play the last few games. So Gettleman's not having that. He's not having guys that quit. He let him go. Eric Flowers is on the chopping block. Flowers was also one of those players. He denied vehemently that he said he didn't want to play the last few games. But he's on the chopping block. And, Eric Flowers gets a lot. He played pretty damn well this year. Giants fans won't forget, he was not one of the worst left tackles in the game. He will get moved to right tackle, which if your technique sucks on the left tackle, who knows why moving him to right tackle is going to be any different. His technique sucks if it sucks, period. But he improved a lot this year. If he doesn't work and Gettleman sees he's not working, he might be relegated to, being a second teamer and eventually being cut. I don't think Gettleman's afraid to eat money. And, I don't think the Maras and Tisches brought him in letting him walk on eggshells. They probably told him, you have free reign to do what you want with the team as long as it's not going to destroy our cap. And I don't know what exactly Eric Flowers' cap hit would be, but if he's this bad, I think he's still on his rookie contract. He's a high draft pick, but he gets a few games. If he doesn't work hard, I think he's going to be benched and possibly gone. So I actually really like the hire of Dave Gettleman for the New York Giants. I think he's going to get that culture back. And if you look at what the Giants need, fans are really overreacting. Personalities are overreacting for exactly what was wrong with the Giants. They want to point to the O-line. They want to point to the run game. They want to point to Eli. They want to point to the lack of play on defense. Everyone forgets Odell Beckham out all year. He was such a star and such a game breaker. He won games on his own. They brought in Brandon Marshall to play complement. He struggled earlier this year, but he started to hit his stride. Then he got hurt. He retired. Your top two wide receivers go down in a passing offense. What the hell else can Eli or anyone do when that was the main focal point of your game? They had to shift gears and do their best not to change their offense completely in order to win games, and that's tough. You had Sterling Shepard, who sat out a few games due to injury as well, come in and really play well. He had to be the number one guy when he's not a number one guy. He's a number two at best. And you had guys like Tavares King and Lewis and, I don't even know some of these guys come in and play who weren't ready to be these guys in the NFL. Now, I think you did a good job of finding your third receiver because both Lewis and Tavares and King showed that they're more than capable of playing in the NFL. So now you have Odell Beckham, who's going to come back as your bona fide one. You're going to have Sterling Shepard as your two, and you have two decent players who have NFL experience now at your 3 and 4. So if their wide receivers are healthy, that pass game is back. Gettleman is going to address the offensive line. He already started showing that he's going to cut players who don't want to play, but they got to get back Justin Pugh. They got to get back Rutherford. They have to get back certain guys and get some camaraderie. I feel like this Giants line could be serviceable. They're not going to be the best line in the NFL, but I feel like, they can get a piece or two, and they can be a really serviceable line. They need a left tackle. They're probably going to move Flowers to right. They need a left tackle. Justin Pugh is going to continue to play. They have at least 3 pieces. They could bring 2 more in, maybe draft one, because this draft has like 6 or 7 pretty damn good linemen. If the Giants decide that they don't need a quarterback, if Gettleman really likes Davis Webb or wants to hold on to Eli, they don't have to draft a QB at 2. They can go lineman. And there's some good friggin' linemen in this draft that can be a centerpiece for years to come. So you look at the possibilities, the Giants aren't that far away from getting back to where they were. And also, Orleans Darkwa made steps this year. And the running back Gallman also showed he's a good complementary player. If those guys continue to improve, there's your run game. There's your pressure taken off. Orleans Darkwa came on strong. Gallman out of Clemson showed he can make big explosive plays. He runs the ball hard. If they can get a third running back in there, I don't think Paul Perkins is the guy. I think he needs to leave. They don't use Shane Vereen correctly. Maybe whoever the new coach is will use Shane Vereen. But in terms of who they have 2 legitimate running backs right now that can continue to develop. And there's always running backs that are around that they can grab as a third complement guy. Just look at the friggin' Patriots. They have 4, and you never know who's going to beat you. Those guys take the next step. So, and you look at the defense, Eli Apple's probably gone. If he wants to open his mouth again, Gettleman's not going to handle that. He's probably going to be gone. Spagnuolo is going to stay. He knows those guys. Janoris Jenkins is a year removed from being one of the top 5 cover corners. DRC, we know what Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie can do. Landon Collins played through an injury this year. A healthy Landon Collins is one of the top 5 safeties in the NFL. So you look at that. Do they need to address middle linebacker? Yeah, they haven't had a middle linebacker in God knows how long. Probably, I don't even know how long ago it's been since their Super Bowl years. They have a good rush line. They still have JPP over there. They have a great run stopper in Damon Snacks Harrison. So they're not lacking on defense. They need to address certain holes, but they're not gaping. Can the Giants go back and win 11 games next year? Hell yeah. So Giant fans, don't sit on the fact that this year sucked. A lot of things went wrong. A lot of injuries happened. You had a very New York Mets type year where on paper the team was strong, but then injuries hit. And no team has the depth to overcome what happened to the Giants this year. Whether it's Davis Webb, whether it's Eli Manning, it sure as hell shouldn't be Geno Smith back there because we know what Geno Smith is. Or if they draft a guy, don't panic. The Giants aren't going to go into this 5-year skid of being terrible. They are not far away from being really good. And if Eli sticks around, he's going to have a good team around him next year. But in terms of Eli sticking around, that's really going to depend on who the Giants grab as a coach. And the names have been floated around of both Patriots coordinators, Matt Patricia, Josh McDaniels, or the Vikings offensive coordinator, Pat Shurmur, who's done wonders with Case Keenum this year, Adam Thielen, and making that offense into an explosive one and a potential Super Bowl one. Obviously, the Giants can't really talk to these guys completely because, they can do phone interviews or little things like that, but these guys are in the middle of a run to try and get to the postseason, or try and get through the postseason with championships. And the likelihood of both of them being in the Super Bowl is pretty damn good. So who knows whether or not these guys are completely interested. Now, the rumors are that Patricia is favored to go to Detroit because Detroit's GM is a longtime Patriots guy. He's known Patricia for years. He's favored to go there. What a surprise. In Indianapolis, McDaniels is favored to go there. Another New England GM, former New England person being a GM there, so that makes sense. The connections are strong there. Those two guys were people that fans of the Giants really wanted to see come in. There was rumors that Belichick coveted the job, Nick Saban coveted the job. I don't think those guys are realistic. Belichick's still under contract. I know there were the rumors and all the issues with New England, but you've seen that those have calmed down. With that win this past weekend, you haven't heard much. Pat Shurmur seems to be the favorite, and as much as he's not a big name and the splash guy and I think that he's a great New York Giants type hire. He's no bull type of guy. He struggled in Cleveland with his first head coaching stint, but who the hell didn't? Shurmur can do some things with the offense. Now, Shurmur coming in may spell doom for Eli as the starter. Shurmur might want a young quarterback. Can they go grab one from free agency? Maybe, but he's sitting at 2. He's looking at Josh Rosen right in the face. Why the hell wouldn't he take a chance on Josh Rosen and try to convince Eli to hang around as a mentor? Even though Eli may want to go down to Jacksonville, but if Blake Bortles plays well, what if Blake Bortles plays the Jags into the Super Bowl? What the hell does that mean for Eli? Eli won't have that great option. There are other options, but who knows what that future is. So if Shurmur comes in, it's going to be interesting to see what goes on with Eli. It'll be interesting to see if he likes Davis Webb enough that he just goes O-line or running back over in that second pick. Shaquan Barkley's there. That's really high for Shaquan Barkley at 2. But he could be an Ezekiel Elliott type of player where he can take the ball and make a team a completely different team. So you look at that, or do the Giants trade out of the second pick, go down, get more picks, and then address running back and O-line at the same time? Who knows? But Shurmur really brings a different dynamic because he knows how to run an offense. He'll run it well. He's another guy, he likes to run the football. And, I think him and Gettleman, a marriage between those two would be good. I think they're on the same brainwaves in terms of the old school style they like to run. And they could be really good in New York. So, Giants fans, if Pat Shurmur's your guy, really don't look down on it. You might have just gotten a great hire. Shifting gears over in New York to the Jets, my Jets. They're obviously out of the playoffs. Their season went much better than expected, but you still can't be satisfied with the losing season. Both Todd Bowles and Mike Maccagnan got 2-year extensions, and I know fans have scoffed at it. My own father-in-law, who is a big Jets fan, Jody Koch, what up, Dad? He scoffed at it. He does not believe in either of those two guys, but I'm on the opposite side. You look at it, and it's something to be said when a team will go out and play hard. Even though they know they're overmatched, they will play their asses off for you. And the Jets came out week in and week out and played their asses off on both sides of the ball. To me, that shows a lot with what they think of Coach Bowles. Their offensive coordinator, John Morton's fantastic. It's been, I think, almost confirmed that he's hanging around. So that's another year with that West Coast offense, which I loved. I think Mike Maccagnan, has he made some bad moves? Yes. Has he made some really good moves? I think Sheldon Richardson for Jermaine Kearse was an awesome move, and it was a steal. You look at that, and I think they both earned the right these 2 more years. In reality, it's 1 year, because 2 years for those contracts is like get it done next year, and we'll see what the future holds. But I think you have those 2 guys, 2 more guys that are on the same brainwaves. And has Todd Bowles made brain farts with clock management. Yeah, he needs to get better there. Everyone needs to improve in certain ways. No one's perfect in every single way, but I really like what Bowles brings in terms of demeanor. We had Rex Ryan. We had the demonstrative guy. We had Eric Mangini, who was kind of a mix of both. We had Herm Edwards, another demonstrative guy. You look at the successful coaches. You look at Bill Belichick. He doesn't give anyone anything. You look at Greg Popovich, another one. Gives no one anything. Has a very stoic look to him when he's talking to the media, and very stoic most of the time. I even look back at great managers like Joe Torre. Joe Torre didn't show a lick of emotion. Bill Parcells, very little emotion. And these guys are some of the greats. So I think Bowles has the demeanor to be a very good head coach, and I think he started to show more this year. He needs to have a winning season next year. I think that is really on, the moral victories. They happened all this year. Moral victories are out the window. Whether they bring Josh McCown back or not, if they might be squeamish about it with what happened to Ryan Fitzpatrick. He had an all-career type of season the year before it comes back. They signed him to a contract, decent-sized contract the next year for a few years, and he completely and totally craps out on them. They might be worried McCown has some of that, and for good reason. The guy's going to be 39. He's old. If he wants to come back and play mentor, awesome. We found out what we needed to know about Bryce Petty. Petty's not the guy. He's really not. He's inaccurate. He looked much more comfortable this time around with throwing the ball, knowing where to go. But again, it's just his deficiencies were way too much to really say, yeah, this guy could be a real NFL quarterback. So I think Bryce Petty's out. We don't know about Hackenberg. I know people are ripping him and, if we haven't seen him in 2 years, then what could he be? Pump the brakes. We didn't see Aaron Rodgers in 3 years. No one knew what the hell Aaron Rodgers really was. He sat back for 3 years, and he's considered the greatest quarterback in the NFL talent-wise. We weren't going to see Tom Brady for 2 years unless Drew Bledsoe gets hurt. So you really look at it, yeah, Tom started to play in his second year, but not by plan. Drew Bledsoe was the guy. And if he doesn't get hurt, we might never have seen Tom Brady in this version of him. He was sitting because he, quote-unquote, wasn't ready either. Everyone needs to pump the brakes on, Christian Hackenberg is awful. He's obviously terrible. He won't play. Something to be said, not all rookies need to play within their first 2 years. Not everyone is ready to play within their first 2 years. Hackenberg will get his shot in terms of training camp this year. Whether or not they bring in a quarterback at 6, which I think Rosen and Darnold are out. I think you have a realistic chance of grabbing Josh Allen, the Wyoming quarterback, who could be pretty damn good. Baker Mayfield's a guy that's there. Lamar Jackson is there. They could go quarterback. And I think Hackenberg is going to get a legitimate chance to compete for the job. I think if they draft a quarterback that high, they're going to be the starter. But I think Hack will be number 2 if he plays well. And if he doesn't play well, I don't think McCagnon's going to keep him around. I think he'll get rid of him. If McCown doesn't come back, we need a veteran. I think that'll be the way they go. But the Jets, I think this year will have more clarity at quarterback than they have in a long time, because also they could go to free agent route. Kirk Cousins is going to be there. One of the 3 Minnesota quarterbacks will be there for the plucking, if not 2, between Teddy Bridgewater, Sam Bradford, Case Keenum. And, it really depends on if Keenum brings him to a Super Bowl. If he brings him to a Super Bowl, I think you can't sit him. You can't not keep him if you're Minnesota. And you also look at Alex Smith. Alex Smith was up to be traded. They said they're willing to listen. Patrick Mahomes' era has started there. Andy Reid wants to go with Mahomes. So Alex Smith is another option. In terms of my money, I want to go for Bridgewater if we're going to go for any of those guys. He's young. He was rising. Many people thought he was ready to take over that team and be one of the top quarterbacks in the league. I think if you're going to take a flyer on any of those guys, you take a flyer on Bridgewater. I also like Kirk Cousins, but I don't think Kirk Cousins is a top 5 quarterback. Is he a good manager of the game? Has he shown real spark? Has he played really, really well? Yeah, but I've just never, believe me, I would welcome Cousins with open arms to the Jets. But I don't think he's that guy that's going to bring us to the Super Bowl. And if he does come, I hope I'm wrong. You look at the Jets and what they have, people forget that Quincy Enunwa sat out this year, and he was ready to have a breakout. He was our number 1 guy. He was looking to have a breakout year. 2 years ago, he played really well. And now you couple him with the speedster Robbie Anderson, the possession receiver Jermaine Kearse, Austin Seferian-Jenkins, who I hope we can get back. We're in negotiations with them at tight end. I think you have something in terms of a passing game. So they need a quarterback there that can make consistent throws. So it's going to be real interesting to see which way they go, whether it's free agency or whether it's draft. Yeah, and if in the draft, will they go another direction? If they get the quarterback in free agency, or if they don't have anyone that high, if they really are high on Darnold and Rosen and can't make a deal to move up, do they just go in a different direction? We know they need O-line help. The O-line played better than expected, but Wesley Johnson isn't a starting caliber center. Do they continue to go with Beachum? Is Carpenter on his way out? Like, there's a lot of question marks on this Jets O-line. They played as a unit and they played tough. You know, they weren't the best offensive line, but they were serviceable. But there is need on the O-line. And again, like I said, this draft is deep for O-line. So the Jets could go that route. They're another team that can use a running back. I think Matt Forte is gone. I think you need to get rid of him. He was a shell of his former self. He suffered through injuries, which is his MO. I think he needs to go. I like Bilal Powell, but he's a guy that's just never going to be a premier back, and that's okay. He has a spot on this running back rotation, but he's not a true number one. Elijah McGuire, as much as he had big playability, had an underwhelming season. So we need a running back there. Quan Barkley's there at 6. I believe he's there at 6. If not, Nick Chubb, Michelle, both of those guys from Georgia, they're going to be there. And they're unbelievable talents out of the running back. So the Jets could go that way. They could go defense again, which fans would be pissed off about because they always seem to go defense in the early rounds. But we need a pass rusher. We haven't had a pass rusher in so long. I know everyone was looking forward to what Lorenzo Maldini was going to do this year before he got hurt. But the reality is he's undersized and he's a speed rusher. We need a guy who could do a mix of both, like a Von Miller, who can rush the passer, whether it's a bull rush or a straight speed rush. So we really need a pass rusher. Or do the Jets trade down from 6 and, get another third-round pick and trade down into a first round because there's no one there that they like at 6? Again, I trust Mike Maccagnan to make the right moves. So we'll see what he does. And, you look at a guy, Mo Wilkerson is more than likely gone. Does Maccagnan try to package him, even though his value is low because they sat him? Rightfully so. I like that move by Bulls. Again, this is another thing I like about Bulls. He sticks to his guns. Another superstar like Wilkerson stays around and plays just because of his talent. Bulls just said, hell no. You don't want to be on this team. You don't want to play for us. You're not playing. Sit. He sat him, which was fantastic in my eyes. I think he's gone. Mo Wilkerson's out of here, but does he get packaged in a trade during the draft? Maybe. We've seen Maccagnan make these awesome type of deals. And there might be a player out there we don't even know of that Maccagnan's looking at with Wilkerson, with a pick. He's definitely someone that you can maybe see on draft day or before get moved or cut. Buster Screen's another guy. I've liked him. He's scrappy, but he gets way too many penalties. So many defensive holdings, so many pass interferences, and he only had 3 really good games. Quarterbacks seem to target him. He's a guy that I think while he was a nice Jet, he's someone that Mike Maccagnan needs to let go. Buster Screen, thank you for your service, but it's time for you to go play for another team. In terms of players that need to get re-signed by the Jets, my 2 highlights, Demario Davis needs to be a New York Jet next year. You saw his tutelage of Darren Lee, the growth of Darren Lee, and I think a lot of that has to go with Demario Davis. He came out, he's a similar type of player, undersized, quick middle linebacker that had to learn how to play middle linebacker in the NFL. He's a good sideline-to-sideline guy, but he's undersized, so he had to learn how to brush off those guards and those tackles that are pulling and hitting him. And Darren Lee has gotten washed a lot by those type of pulling guards on the run game. But Demario Davis seems to have figured it out. He had an amazing all-pro type year, and I think that bringing him back would only be the smart thing. He could be a centerpiece middle linebacker like we had with Jonathan Vilma and David Harris, and even Mo Lewis going further back. So you bring him back. And I also think if he's going to give you a team-friendly deal, you bring back Morris Claiborne. Is he a bona fide number 1? No. But he is a really good corner. And if you let go of Buster Screen, you bring back Morris Claiborne on a friendly team. I think the Jets have somewhere like $100 million to spend. They have a lot of money to spend. I think Trufant's on the market. You can go get a lockdown guy like Trufant to go with Claiborne, and you have a very Revis Cromartie-like tandem out there that you can play the Bull-style defense where he goes man and puts his corners on those islands. So those are the guys that I think the Jets need to re-sign. I really am looking forward to the offseason for both the Jets and the Giants. I think they're both actually going to point in the right direction. I think New York football will be pretty damn good for the next few years. Speaking of a violent game, a game that's becoming more violent, the NBA. Has anyone else besides me noticed that there's been a lot more violence, a lot more fights, a lot more scraps in this current NBA than we've seen in years? Whether it's, Lowry and Simmons jawing and really going at it, or I think, two players, one player threw a punch at another and the other one put him in a headlock. Rockets using a secret passage to go into the Clippers locker room to try and fight them, even though they were never going to fight. But even on the court stuff, or just so many, it's ridiculous just how many things. Serge Ibaka and James Jones actually hitting each other. I don't think we've seen actual punches thrown in an NBA game in forever. You've seen pushes, you've seen this and that, but there's a lot more going on this year where it's much chippier and it's much more violent. There's more fighting, actual fighting. And to me, it's very old school-esque where Barkley and Shaq, Oakley, Larry Johnson, the enforcers, the players that didn't have any problems throwing hands and doing it on the court. And it was just something that happened. Part of me thinks that it's these players now, they've heard for how many years this NBA is soft. This NBA is weak. There's nothing tough about this NBA. These players are all soft guys. And they're hearing it going, hell no. We idolize those tough guys. We started playing basketball because of those dudes that used to be tough. The bad boy Pistons, the great Knicks teams of those years with the enforcers on the Knicks. All these types of players who didn't give a damn and would just go and go hard. I know a lot of people are like, oh, well, this type of basketball is just prettier to see. It's nicer to see. And while in terms of pure basketball, it's nicer to see play-wise, it was so much more fun in the 90s when there was hand checking. The rim was being protected. Steph Curry would not be Steph Curry and all these little drives. And you think for a second Steph Curry driving to the basket wouldn't have gotten destroyed at the beginning of the game by an enforcer to let him know, you don't come in here. You don't come into this paint and don't think you're not getting contact. The games were a lot more low scoring and they were a lot more physical. But for me, that was more, they're grown men. These are gigantic, ogreish men, testosterone flying around. The violent part of it back in the day for me was part of the fun. While I don't want to see fights, I'm not a fan of just all these fights, but it's just kind of showing that aggression that was once there in basketball is starting to peak his head again. And if we're going to get back to some really good hard-nosed basketball where the paint's getting protected again, players are not afraid to be physical anymore. I think the refs are going to start to change the way they call the game a little bit. I think that you're going to see less of these ticky-tacky fouls because it's just going to become the game again. Or you're going to see a lot more ejections and players are going to have to slow it down. It'll go one of two ways. Do I think it's good for the game? People will argue, no, it's not good for the game. That's not basketball. I think it's great. I think, I want to see the physicality. I want to see these players be athletes. I want to see these big guys have a chip on their shoulder, protect their other players, protect their superstars. Like Enes Kanter, I think he was injured in one of the games for the Knicks, and he was, overheard or quoted for telling the guys, hey, you know what? We're playing like crap. Go start a fight. And I'm not talking about, scrap. Go hit someone. I'll pay that fine. That to me is awesome. That's old school basketball. And I think it's great for the game. What I don't think is good for the game is the way the Cleveland Cavaliers have been playing. They've been hot garbage. They're looking old. They're playing old. And no one is helping LeBron James. And I think they dropped 6 games in a row as of today, which is unheard of in a LeBron James era. He's obviously been pissed. There's reports about players really getting down on the culture that's there and the way that they've been playing, and as they should. They're a championship caliber team playing like crap. Do I think that this is the real Cleveland Cavaliers? Or is this just a mid-season lull? I don't think this is the real Cavs. I think, we're seeing a older team that is not playing well, but I also think we're seeing a team that's going to get kicked in the ass come near trade deadline. The Cavs aren't just going to sit there and play like crap. They're not going to not look for trades, not look for moves. I think we could see the Cavaliers making a really big move come deadline. Everyone talks about Boogie Cousins going to Washington. Don't hold your breath. Don't hold your breath on Kevin Love, one of these other big players, even IT. I know he's just getting there and getting back, and we're waiting to see the swing, but he's taking a lot of shots, missing a lot of shots. One of these other players, a nice package to get someone like a Boogie Cousins to come over to Cleveland. He's a very versatile player, and as much as I've knocked Boogie, I don't think he's going to go at a guy like LeBron, a guy with the clout of LeBron, a guy who's one of the rare players that's more talented than DeMarcus Cousins in the NBA. Because let's not kid ourselves. DeMarcus Cousins is one of the best players, the most talented players in the NBA. He's just kind of a knucklehead. But LeBron James is one of the rare players in the NBA that can actually step up to DeMarcus Cousins and say, I'm better than you. And DeMarcus Cousins can't say anything about it. So don't sleep on the Cavs. I don't think this is the real Cavs team, even as it is. But don't sleep on the Cavs making a move. The trade deadline comes earlier this year. So the pretenders and the contenders need to really, the buyers and sellers need to make themselves known quicker. So we're going to see some different types of trades, and we might see some bigger blockbuster trades than normal because teams are going to be in panic mode. After the All-Star break is usually when the playoffs start to shape up and teams start to really know what's going on. But that's not the case. That's not the case right now. This year is going to be different. So the NBA trade deadline could be a lot more funner. Look out for some Woj bombs. Adrian Wojnarowski is going to be really, really, really busy this year. Speaking of teams that may need to make a trade, the New York Knicks started off really well this year. Kristaps Porzingis is playing MVP level. Then there started to be a skid. Tim Hardaway Jr. gets hurt, and there's an obvious hole there that without Hardaway helping Kristaps Porzingis, it really doesn't, there's not much there. Porzingis got tired. He had a nice game against my Brooklyn Nets the other day, but he needs real help. Hardaway's back. They need to play better with him back. They need to show that they can play a better game. They don't need to rely on only Porzingis. And my key to success with this current team for these Knicks, Porzingis and Hardaway need to be the guys. They need to play through them. But when those guys are on the bench, Enes Kanter's been playing great ball. Michael Beasley's been playing great ball. And they really need to continue to play through them on the reserves. I know Enes Kanter's a starter, but he needs to get time with that reserves because Michael Beasley can't do it on his own. They brought up Trey Burke. He's a nice player, but, is he going to be the guy? I don't think so. Jarrett Jack isn't the guy at point guard. Frank Ntilikina has also shown that he's not really the guy either. So you're looking at this Knicks team, and they need one more piece. Now, I just spoke about the trade deadline, and I think that's where the Knicks also can make a move. They need to get a real point guard. Frank Ntilikina might be the guy down the road, but right now they need a real point guard that can score, that can dish the rock, that can really help out Porzingis and make those other guys the reservists and help have that second unit be good with Burke and Ntilikina, but they need a real starter at point guard. So I think the Knicks are a team that can make a move come trade deadline, and I'm looking forward to seeing the Knicks with Hardaway and hopefully step their game up. So the Garden, all the fans are now piling in the Garden. They need to see more out of this team. They need to get something from these Knicks now because playoffs aren't unrealistic for this Knicks team. They just need to start playing better. Moving to Brooklyn, my favorite team, who just suffered that loss against the Knicks. One thing I've seen from the Nets, they aren't consistent. They can play really well against these great teams, but then they fall into lulls where they don't play well against teams that they're supposed to beat. Spencer Dinwiddie, he's played great this year, but he's also inconsistent. You can't disappear like he did. I think he had 8 points or 6 points last game. If you want to be the guy, you can't have like these 2 of 16 shooting nights and disappear. Rondae Hollis-Jefferson's been playing better. Karis LeVert has been playing good. Those two guys have been consistent, but the rest of the team Alan Crabb, shooting the three better of late, but he's super inconsistent. There's a lot of guys on this team that are just not playing well enough in order for the Nets to really take that next level and be a good team. D'Angelo Russell is practicing with the Long Island Nets, the G League affiliate for the Brooklyn Nets. He's scheduled to come back and play. I'm hoping that he can bring that consistency. I'm hoping that he could be that star that the Nets need in order to be consistent. That guy that when there's a run starting to happen, he stops that run because he scores those two straight buckets that really break that run and swing the momentum back the Nets' way. I think as long as D'Angelo Russell's healthy, he was averaging near 20 points when he started. You get the experience that Dinwiddie just got at point guard. And, maybe move Alan Crabb back down to the bench. You slide Russell over at the 2, let him start with Dinwiddie, keep DeMarre Carroll in the starting lineup, Rondae Hollis-Jefferson at the 4, and damn, we need Jahlil Okafor to start. Tyler Zeller is playing nice, don't get me wrong, but Atkinson, KA, you need to start putting more on Okafor. The only way he's going to get in real shape is by playing. He had that big burst, 17 points in 12 minutes. We saw what Okafor can do. Let the man play. The Nets fans need to see him play. We need to get that consistency. And maybe he's waiting for Russell to come back to really push Okafor and him together. But God, I can't wait. We need to see Okafor more. I mentioned Kenny Atkinson, head coach. As the fans, Nets fans, I think, are slowly starting to believe in what we see, the product that we see on the floor, how hard this team fights. And we're starting to believe that the Nets can be good and that the Nets can win games. They competed on back-to-back games, really tight, down to last shots against both the Raptors and the Celtics. They showed the fan base that they could play consistent and competent ball. Once Russell comes back, and Okafor starts to play more, all bets are off. The Nets need to start winning games. They can't go on these 3-game skids. They can't be that team that loses like that and can't close out games or gets behind really early. And I think that puts more pressure on Kenny Atkinson as a coach. I love Kenny Atkinson. He's a great coach. But if they only play hard but can't close out games or can't start games or the rotation is still very deep and seems to be out of whack, there needs to be, does it shorten Kenny Atkinson's leash? It might. Because I don't think that the Nets fans, the Nets front office, really has the time or the patience. Sean Marks wants to win. He wants to do it in the right way. And if he sees this team has the ability to win, he's going to expect it to happen. It's not going to be a mandate, but they're close without their best player in D'Angelo Russell. They're close without their starting point guard starting this year was Jeremy Lin. He's out for the year. And we need to get more out of Okafor. So there needs to be something done. The Nets are always a team with the way Sean Marks wheels and deals that can make a trade at the deadline. So we'll see if, Harris is possibly packaged in a deal. There's certain players that the Nets can move, but we shall see what holds the future for the Nets. But I think the Nets need to start showing something once they get healthy, because right now the faith is there because we're shorthanded. But once Russell comes back, once Okafor starts playing more, fans are going to get restless if they're not a better team, including myself. Moving on, we're going to talk a little college football, and we're going to talk about my Rutgers Scarlet Knights. I'm a big Rutgers fan. I'm from Jersey. I like Florida State as well, but Rutgers has been my team since I was growing up being a Jersey boy. Under the radar, they just got possibly the biggest recruit in the history of the school. They picked up 4-star QB Arthur Sitkowski from IMG Academy. He's originally from New Jersey. He's a Jersey boy, Old Bridge kid. It's big because if you watch his highlight film, he has a big arm. He's a great pro-style quarterback. Really stands in there, has good technique. The ball snaps out of his hands. In the highlight, he underthrew a few deep balls, but he's going to need to work on that. But he has the size, he has the arm talent to be a legitimate collegiate and Big Ten quarterback. This is big, especially getting him an early signing. This is big for a Rutgers program that is really struggling to find its footing in the Big Ten. There's a lot of things that needed to be addressed in order to get there. Coach Chris Ash has done a great job, I think, with an under-talented team in the Big Ten, but He's really doing a good job, and this just shows that the faith in the program, they flipped him completely from the University of Miami, and that's a big flip. I think that Chris Ash is doing a good thing. This is a huge signing, but it's also one that he needs to start right away. Being this 4-star guy, you look at who they have coming back. They have Giovanni Resigno, who's the returning starter. They have rising sophomore Jonathan Lewis, and they also got a 3-star recruit freshman, Jalen Chapman. He needs to be better than all three of those guys. He needs to be the best guy in the quarterback room. A 4-star talent like his, Rutgers doesn't get that type of talent in terms of quarterback. They need to start him. He needs to show right away that he's able to play at this level. But with that, his signing can bring some really good things, because one of the biggest knocks that Rutgers has had is their O-line play. They're great at running the ball, but they can't pass protect, and it's mostly because they're very undersized and under-talented against these Big Ten defenses. They need to really address their offensive line during this recruiting time. They need to bring in, with this 4-star quarterback, they need to really start working on these offensive linemen and say, listen, we have the guy. We have a guy that can compete in the Big Ten with us, but we need you. You need to protect him. They need to really, Jersey talent's unbelievable. New York talent, Long Island, all this, the tri-state talent, Pennsylvania. There's a boatload of football talent. Coach Ash needs to harness that. He needs to go into the rooms of these big offensive linemen that are being recruited by the SEC, other Big Ten schools, ACC, and say, you can go to those schools. They're unbelievable football schools. Or you could take some pride in Jersey, and you can build something with me, with our new quarterback, and you can get us to the promised land. If Rutgers can become competitive in the Big Ten, it would be an unbelievable thing. I'm hoping I can see it before my lifetime. Like I said, I really like Coach Ash. I think he does the things right, and I think this will really help with future recruits. But I think offensive lineman needs to be the focus on this recruiting class. They got their quarterback. Now it needs to shift to the offensive line. They typically have a decent defense. They have very good skill players. Their running game is always solid. They need the offensive line to complement that quarterback that they have coming in. Last but not least, as I started this podcast, I'm going to close it. I'm going to give another shout out to Marist Track and Field, both men's and women's, the indoor program. This weekend, they have the New York City Gotham Cup coming up this Friday at Ocean Breeze, Staten Island again. Beautiful facility. Please support them, think about them, root for them, because they really, our track and field program can use the support. Mentioned it on the podcast before, Marist does not have an actual indoor or outdoor track of their own, and they continue to set records in the sprint program, both men and women. The distance, men and women work hard. We don't have a field program. We have a lone jumper, Fallon Quigley, and we usually have one jumper here or there, but they work really hard on their own without the proper facilities. So really root for this group of young athletes. They're fantastic kids. I know most of them. And big shout out to you guys. Go compete hard. Go Red Foxes. So with that ends episode 8 of the Sports Opinions Podcast. I hope you enjoyed listening to me flying solo today. I had a lot to talk about. I said a lot. I, of course, am Alex Cuesta. You can find me at Twitter at @AQuestaNBN. And you can always, and I encourage, please go follow us on our Twitter at Sports Opinions, at SportOpinion30. Thank you again for listening. Sports Opinions Podcast, Episode 8. So long.